What is going on with you? So, Brandon Hanley here, Voice of Generation, Spiritual Dope Podcast. Wanted to touch base about yesterday's podcast. First of all, sorry, sorry, not sorry. The audio on it was garbage, man. So really sorry about that. Not sure exactly what happened. Had a lav mic plugged in, and I thought that it was better than it was. Deal is, content I thought was pretty good. Got some good feedback, so thanks for the feedback on that. So it just reminds me of a message that I heard years ago. It's really about the message, not so much the delivery. Of course, in this day and age, I'm not trying to give myself an excuse for putting out shitty audio quality. But just remember when you were a kid, right? Most of this audience is like in the 30 plus region. If you're younger than that, thanks for tuning in. But we're like in the 30s plus, probably closer to like 40s, high 30s. When cable TV was out, right? Remember cable fucking TV? And there was that channel, and you were like, I gotta check it out. I'm not allowed to watch it. It was the Scrambled channel. You know what I'm talking about. And you would catch a boob, you would catch a dick, you would catch something, and you would run out and tell your friends. You're like, Bobby, Susan, I found the shit. I saw a dick. I saw some boob. You're never gonna believe what I did. Look what I did. It was so important to you that you didn't care about the quality of the content, right? And the same thing kind of happens in this space. For me, like I'll listen to some crazy audio. Sometimes I'll turn it off, but hopefully I catch that same content somewhere else or from the same person, right? So hopefully it wasn't too bad for you. I mean, look at how we all stood in line to get the COVID vaccine. We didn't care what the delivery mechanism was. We didn't care where we had to go get it. We just knew that we had to have it. Hopefully this podcast is like that for you. So that being said, there is another reason that I like to do these podcasts in the car. And when we are on this learning journey and when we begin to make leaps in our minds, we can be scared to share what we think is happening. I know I can be, because if it's not scientifically validated, everybody's like, well, that's woo-woo, that's shit, that's not how it works. To that, I'll combat stuff like, well, you might not know the mathematics behind the speed, rate, and trajectory that it's going to take for you to stop at that stop sign, but somehow, magically, in your fucking mind, you do it. It happens, right? You're coming up to a stop sign, you stop the car, there's a lot of math, there's physics, there's a whole bunch of shit that you know how to do it. Now, if somebody asked you to go around and make a calculation of that shit, you'd be like, I can't. What? I can't explain to you how I know what to do, how I do, but I can do it. And so that's great, but so part the challenge there is we want to be able to communicate how we know what we're doing, because when we have some of these insights, when we have some of the things that happen for us, we're like for me, for example, again, driving the car and doing a podcast and sharing a message that's coming through for me, or just being kind of in a zone after I come out of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, all amped up on the the dopamines, the epinephrines, the oxy, I don't know the right one, the one, love drugs and whatever. But what's interesting, I'm pulling out a book. It's called The Art of Impossible, a Peak Performance Primer by Steven Kotler. Let's see if I can get the image in there beyond the green screen. No? Okay. Sorry about that. So try to get the image in there, but this is a really good book. And it's really interesting because for me, a peak experience, and you can go to Abraham Maslow and you can look. I mean, I'm pretty sure that's where we get peak experience from. at the peak there is self-realization, right? Self-actualization, I believe, is the terminology he uses. But a peak experience in life is recognizing your innate spirituality, right? Your innate creativity, and being able to access that kind of at will. And Stephen Kotler and a lot of other people, I believe, call this being in the flow state. And I think that it goes beyond the flow state. The flow state, in my mind, is basically where your time and space and all that other shit stops, and you're just you're in this great feel good space doing what you love to be doing and doing it well. And when I'm doing the podcast and when I'm driving, I feel like, it has I share some things and I feel like I share them well. And I feel like they're impactful. I feel like they come from a place that, there's a grittiness to it, right? That's just like, it's true, it's raw, it's real. And so I love to share from that state. In his book, The Art of Impossible, he talks about a couple different, the flow cycle, right? So the flow cycle, he talks about stage one is the struggle, where a lot of times, and he's talking about our emotions don't mean what we think that they mean. For most people, frustration is a sign that they're moving in the wrong direction. However, and he said that frustration is a sign that you're moving in the right direction, which I love because right now I'm seeing my youngest child experience frustration, and I keep telling him not to get frustrated, but now I'm like, hey, go ahead, get frustrated. That just means that you're moving in the right direction. It just means that it means enough to you that you want to learn how to do it, that like you're pissed because you can't, right? You keep going, you keep doing that thing because you want to be able to accomplish it, but you can't, and so you're frustrated with that. So he talks about that a little bit, and getting into that, and he says the flow starts with a decision to fight back. That frustration is transformed into courage. If you've been listening to the podcast for a while, for me that courage is super meaningful, in that's the state that pulls you out of like fear and all the other shit. And recently I wrote something down. To me, courage is moving forward, not just like in spite of fear, but moving forward with strength and courage. All right, so strength and courage combined together, to me, strength and love combined equal courage, right? You move forward with strength and love, and that's courage in my mind. So he says flow starts with a decision to fight back against frustration. I'm going to caveat this too, just simply because of everything that I've been listening to recently. It's like we're in like February and I'm already like taking in so much content. My brain is just like swimming in all kinds of awesome. But there's also the healthy normal, right? So, I mean, you don't have to get fucking frustrated. You don't have to hit the bottom in order to become creative or get yourself in a flow state, but you do have to, there's something that you're trying to overcome, there's something that you're trying to get into, there's a state that like the regular, where you are today all the time, there's still a space that you try to bypass in order to get into flow state. So what I wanted to share today was this idea that I had absolutely thought of before, and this came from, there's a really great course in Coursera, it's called Learning How to Learn, and in that course, I forget the teacher's name, she talks about the, frontal cortex, the piece in front of our mind, right, the executive mind function and all that other shit, the gatekeepers, if you will, right, and basically, we can only take in about 4 pieces of information, and I think that we can take in like 40 bits while, and I wrote this down somewhere else actually recently, we can only take in like 40 bits of information while our actual subconscious can like take in a shit ton. I don't know what the real number is, but like 40 bits in our conscious mind that we can kind of access and work with and juggle, right? Once you get beyond like that, like you're either in an overwhelm or you just fucking let it go, right? So you can either be overwhelmed by, four things coming at you at once, or you can let go of like the fucking noise. You can be like, that's noise. All kinds of people will tell you, make the important thing the important thing. What's the important thing? Keep your eye on that one. Keep your eye on the prize. You can only pay attention to so many different things, right? And over time, anyways, like let's go back to me driving. And I'm driving. When I first learned how to drive, like I had to pay attention to everything driving, right? Like there was mad focus on driving until they were learned tendencies, and like my subconscious can like handle it all on its own, right? And it's all just kind of supernatural. I'm not going to change that, right? Supernatural, like it just happens and it just works because I've done it so many times. It's a part of who I am. It's been built in, right? Subconscious is all like, do what you need to do. We got this. At the same time, right? I'm still paying attention, right? So now I'm driving. I'm just making sure that like I'm not hitting shit, and I'm also now trying to keep like we're talking. Let's go back. Keeping four things in mind, right, at a time. Like try to remember 5 numbers right now, top of your head. Be like 5, 6, 7, 8, but in different orders, right? The numbers that you just don't know. Somebody spits them at you. How do you do that? And oftentimes you struggle. Like once you get beyond 4 of anything, you've got to write it down. Okay, and you've got to keep notes and all kinds of different stuff. So when you're driving, and in this class talks about so you can keep these 4 things in mind, and once you've got those 4 things coming in, subconscious kind of has to take over. Subconscious needs to kick in somewhere, or you release something to the subconscious, and so this is in The Art of Impossible. It talks about the getting into the flow state, the cycles of it. The second stage is the release phase. So and I'd already thought about this. I promise you, I just didn't know how to communicate it. And he says during the struggle, right, the prefrontal cortex is hyperactive. It's working feverishly to solve a problem. In release, we want to relax and let go. The goal is to take your mind off the problem. This allows us to pass information processing responsibilities from the conscious to the unconscious. Executive attention disengages, and the default mode network takes over. Release is an incubation period. It's about allowing the brain's pattern recognition system to chew on a problem for a while you do other things, right? Which is great because here, if you're in this growth space, if you're in this personal development space, if you're chasing down your spirituality, you're a seeker, right? You're like, what the fuck? I'm trying to figure out this problem, and I've been just taking in all this information. I've been putting all this hyper focus on it and force, and it's just not working. I don't fucking get it. And the moment you step back, the moment you let go, it falls into fucking place. You're like, what? Why was I struggling so hard? Why was I trying so hard to do all these things? Right? Because, first of all, you were trying to work with 40 bits. Right? You were trying to work with like your prefrontal, your egoic mind, your 40 bits that thinks it's so fucking clever, that thinks it knows all the things, that thinks it can keep it together. Right? How many of you that are listening today would trust your prefrontal cortex to keeping you alive while you sleep, to digesting your food, to making your blood, to growing your hair? Enough of you anxious as fuck already, right? Why would you're like, who needs that shit? I don't need that shit, right? So while I'm driving, right, this is my release period. The subconscious is taking all these problems and everything that I've tossed into it, and it's just spitting stuff out at me now. Now it's just like, because I'm trying to drive. My prefrontal, like the thing that thinks that it's fucking the egoic mind, I'm just going to call it that. I'm sure it's really wrong. But that's focused on trying to drive. It's focused on all these other things, whereas like my subconscious, or he's calling it the unconscious, is just like, hey, we did all this information, we knocked it all down for you, we put it into a format, it's pretty fucking awesome, you didn't have to do shit because we got you, and it spits it back out. because I'm focused on driving, right? So I think that that's really cool, and I've been looking for, you look for validation to your insights, right? You're like, hey, I have an insight. What is this insight that I've got? And then you're like, how do I verbalize this to people? And they're like, well, you don't have a science degree. You're not like you don't have like where's your degree that says that you can say that? And here's the deal. So you got to go out and validate it with somebody else. Somebody else has found what you've been looking for, and just spit it back out. So this is it in The Art of Impossible, and he's talking about the flow cycle and the stage 2 release. And again, this is like your prefrontal cortex, and this is why I love to do the podcast in the car. So like I'm gonna title this podcast "Sorry Not Sorry." It's the message, not the delivery. Really do apologize for the audio quality, but it's also cool to. I want you to understand why I even bother to try to do them in the car. And also here's some things that you could do for yourself, right? So I want you to also, flip the script a little bit for yourself, right? When you, and for me, this has been amazing, right? The flow cycle, once you get into a frustration state, understand that you're not you're frustrated, and that's a good thing. You're frustrated because you're trying to accomplish something. You're frustrated and you're like, all right, well, fuck it. Let's go. Let's get all the information. Let's pull it all together. I'm ready. And, once you say yes to that frustration, right? Where does it say? He says, you can't get enough. You begin to, embody courage, right? You face this challenge that you have. You make the decision to fight back. He says, hell yes, I'll fight. This is where I make my stand. You face the fight, though, with courage, and that courage is love and strength and love, right? And when you approach it like that, there's less, it's not a resistance to anything. It's an acceptance of, okay, these are the facts. This is the way that it is. And I embrace that. I hold that and I create space for that. And then let your subconscious do the work. And this is what people meant by let go and let God, right? If I let go and let God, that means I get the fuck out of my own way, because I can't, with the 40 bits processing in my prefrontal cortex, handle some of the big problems alone, right? In that moment sometimes. And so it's like, all right, well, he even talks about it in this book. It's so great. It's a really great book. I highly recommend it. The Art of Impossible. Maybe I'll make a link to it. Maybe I won't. I don't know. It's a really good book because there's a science to it. And, if you've ever thought about like what it means to let go and let God, this is really kind of what it could mean. Allow for the things that are keeping you alive, your subconscious, that's like just on hyperdrive. And I forget, I'll look for the numbers sometime. But understand that that's the release. You let go of it. If you can stop putting pressure on yourself in this immediate moment for the answer, when the answer is really not oftentimes, right? And this is training from school, from back in the day. Oh, I got to finish this test. And, you put all this pressure on yourself to get the answer right fastest. To get an answer fastest. And sometimes that first answer is not going to be the right answer. And you'll know what the right answer is for yourself when you're just like, you resonate with it. You feel so good with it. You're like, that's the fucking answer that I've been looking for so long. If you can take the weight off of how long it's going to take for something to happen, then it just kind of happens in an organic way that's natural and feels good. I know it may not make sense, and you got to find that people talk about a paradox. There's a paradox in all this, right? Actually, just experienced it a little bit earlier in a work that I did. There's a space, and we're talking about there's a space in between states of being, right? There's a space in between, all kinds of ways that you already are. And it's in that space, in that transition space, where the magic happens. And I don't really know how to communicate that so well just yet. This is the idea of the mystical experience. This is the idea of a whole bunch of other things. But it's a state that's really hard to translate. It could be the flow state, where you just get into it, where you let go of the worry, where you let go of the anxiety, where you say, fucking, yeah, and you can say, let go and let God. And when you understand that you're letting go of some of this noise, right? I talked about earlier, you've got the 4 pieces up there, and you're like, what's the important thing? You let go of everything that's really not important to that thing. And you're left with the essence of the thing. You're left with something that's ethereal, it's light and meaningful, and all the excess baggage just falls away, and you feel good. Okay, that's it. Later.